Welcome to Module 5, Psychological Methods of Managing at-Risk Behavior. This is the final module of the course. My name is David Tan. In this module, we will explore the psychological principles that influence at-risk behavior and examine practical approaches to managing and reducing unsafe actions in the workplace. We will discuss how human factors, attitudes, perceptions, decision-making, and behavioral patterns can contribute to risk-taking, and how understanding these factors can help promote safer workplace behaviors. 5.1 Disciplining unsafe practices or exercising discretion. When addressing at-risk behavior, it is essential to first establish whether the individual's engagement in unsafe practices was deliberate or occurred inadvertently. The critical consideration that follows is whether disciplinary action should be imposed where an individual has knowingly and intentionally engaged in unsafe conduct, or whether the organization should exercise discretion and permit the matter to pass without formal intervention. The following article was authored by me in 2007, entitled, Balancing Positive and Negative Reinforcement in Safety Management, David Tan KP, 2007. The article was made available through www.behavioural-safety.com and was subsequently accessed in 2009. The principles examined in the aforementioned article establish a framework for understanding the necessity of addressing unsafe practices through an approach that is equitable, consistent, and procedurally just. The intervention of unsafe behavior should not be regarded solely as a matter of imposing disciplinary action. Rather, it requires a comprehensive evaluation of the relevant circumstances, the individual's intent, and the underlying factors that may have contributed to the occurrence of such behavior. The article is reproduced below for reference. There should be a balance between punishing, negative reinforcement, and nurturing, positive reinforcement. The philosophy of managing health and safety is that there is no point nurturing a person who repeatedly ignores rules and regulations. Such violators should be eliminated if there is no other choice. Unsafe act should be nurtured and resolve as soon as reasonably practicable before it is being repeated, whereas, violation, unsafe act should be punished to stop further violation unsafe practices, otherwise the whole safety management system would be disrupted. To justify the philosophy of punishing violators and nurturing errors, an observation was conducted from the 28th of February 2005 to the 1st of April 2005 led by SD Safety International to find the behavior of pedestrians when crossing roads in our small country of Singapore and why some pedestrians refused to employ the overhead bridge and whether the local authorities took appropriate action to these pedestrians who disregards their lives. The result of this observation has discovered the justification about why balancing positive, punishing violators, and negative, nurturing errors, reinforcement is essential to managing safety and health management system. Figure illustrated the thoughts of a pedestrian, whether the pedestrian would want to take a shortcut by crossing the road without using the overhead bridge. On the first day of observation, the task force observed 12 pedestrians crossing the road on one of the busiest roads of Singapore without employing the overhead bridge within the span of 10 minutes during the busy lunch hour. During this observation, interviews were conducted and majority of these pedestrians said that by taking the shortcut, it saves them time, and they do not have to drag their feet to the tiring stairs of the overhead bridge. To put a scenario in such a manner that can block the mindset of pedestrians taking the at-risk behaviors, the task force went to another busy road where there is a barrier in the middle of the road as shown in figure. This time, the task force observed whether any kind of shortcuts that can be taken by pedestrians with such a condition. After some 20 minutes of observation, 2 pedestrians took the shortcut and crossed the road by jumping over the barrier. An interview was then conducted. One of the pedestrians said that the shortcut saves him time, and he does not have to climb up the tiring stairs of the overhead bridge. He added that he was young and can jump over the barrier without hurting himself. Another pedestrian declined the interview. To trigger a scenario such that the task of using the overhead bridge was made easier for pedestrians, the task force went to another location where there is a barrier and an escalator as shown in figure. This time the task force observes whether any more shortcuts that can be taken by pedestrians. It took approximately 1 hour 15 minutes to capture a pedestrian crossing the road by jumping over the barrier. See figure. The task force attempted an interview with the pedestrian but was then hostility rejected. The task force then went on to put a prominent signage that says, "Fine $50, no crossing, use the bridge," to trigger the mindset of pedestrians as shown in figure with the permission of the local authorities. This time, it took approximately 49 hours 12 minutes to capture a pedestrian discreetly jumped over the barrier. An attempted interview with the pedestrian was rejected as he ran away quickly. In view of the above observation, the task force suggested that if the pedestrian is one of an organization's shop floor personnel and that the organization had in due diligence put the right working conditions, environment and procedures including training and refresher training, what can the management of the company do to the shop floor personnel but to punish the worker for violating the rules and regulations? The concept of punishing violators and nurturing errors should be adopted in any health and safety management system. There should be no doubt that many organizations do experience violation unsafe practices at the site. One of the most ridiculous safety violations cited is the smoking of cigarettes at a flammable process plant, and that the organization, not to be named, recorded outstanding 7 occasions in the year of 2006 alone. This was despite many campaigns launched and several nurturing programs given to all levels not to violate the smoking policy. It was then led with no choice at one point of time in the beginning of year 2007 but to terminate a shop floor personnel from the workforce who has repeatedly defied the smoking policy by smoking cigarette at one of the most hazardous reactors within the flammable process plant. After the termination and broadcasting the matter to the whole organization, there was no incident recorded for smoking cigarette at the site from the day of the termination. Another incident is that one of the line managers obstinate and refused to install a fixed working platform for the safe access and egress, despite several reminders from the safety and health representative, including the busy outstation managing director, that it would be very risky for any shop floor personnel if they needed to gain the access to fix choked solenoid valves during ad hoc occasions without a working platform. As a result, a technician eventually fell and broke his right arm. The line manager was then dismissed after thorough investigation and consideration from the top management. From these incidents, the organization recognized the importance of balancing, punishing violators and nurturing errors so that in-house safety rules and regulations in the safety management system are abided. The smoking at the flammable process plant case is known as the Direct Unsafe Violation Act, while the line manager's case is a violation decision, which has caused another victim to suffer. Direct or indirect unsafe violation practices shall be equally punished because it contributed heavy losses to the company. On the other hand, management also recognized that certain at-risk behaviors lead to an accident or near miss can be caused by errors, and such cases have to be nurtured, resolved and rectified immediately to avoid repeated errors. Repeated error is a violation if not resolved in due diligence. The balancing of error and violation is very important for the success of any safety approaches. Reference is often made to no blame or blame-free culture equates to no punishment of unsafe acts. The terminology and the concept used are totally wrong. No blame or blame-free does not equate to no punishment. The definition of the word blame means to accuse, and we should not be going around accusing workers if they have not done anything wrong. Punishment, on the other hand, should be balanced within the organization, and it has to be fair and just. Editorial note: in this edition, the term punish has been replaced with discipline. The use of the word punish may inadvertently convey an impression of blame or fault attribution before a proper assessment has been undertaken. In contrast, the term discipline better reflects a fair and structured process, whereby a thorough investigation is conducted, the relevant facts and circumstances are carefully considered, and an appropriate conclusion is reached before any disciplinary action is taken. 5.2 Intervening in at-risk behavior. Intervening in at-risk behavior requires direct engagement with the individual responsible for the unsafe practice. The effectiveness of an intervention depends not only on what is communicated, but also on the approach adopted by the safety leader. Selecting an appropriate intervention approach is essential for minimizing conflict, promoting mutual understanding, and encouraging positive behavioral change. The person conducting the intervention therefore plays a significant role in influencing workplace behavior and reinforcing the organization's safety culture. Within occupational safety and health management, different situations require different intervention approaches. An overly directive approach may discourage discussion and reduce worker engagement, whereas an overly passive approach may fail to address unacceptable safety risks. Effective safety leaders therefore adapt their intervention approach according to the circumstances, the level of risk, and the factors contributing to the at-risk behavior. Understanding the following behavioral intervention approaches enables safety leaders to select the most appropriate method when addressing unsafe acts, discussing hazards, or providing feedback on at-risk behavior. 5.2.1 Controlling or corrective approach. A controlling or corrective approach is characterized by clear direction, firm expectations, and reinforcement of safety rules and procedures. It is appropriate where immediate action is required to prevent harm, ensure compliance with critical safety requirements, or stop an unsafe act. When applied appropriately, this approach establishes clear safety boundaries and reinforces the importance of complying with organizational standards and legal requirements. While a controlling or corrective approach is necessary where there is an immediate risk to safety or a clear breach of safety requirements, excessive reliance on this approach may produce unintended behavioral responses. Workers who perceive an intervention as overly authoritarian, confrontational, or focused solely on fault-finding may become defensive, reluctant to communicate openly, or resistant to future safety interventions. In some cases, repeated use of a highly controlling approach may foster resentment and encourage rebellious behavior, resulting in reduced cooperation and a decline in the overall safety culture. 5.2.2 Supportive and caring approach. A supportive and caring approach focuses on understanding the circumstances that contributed to the at-risk behavior while demonstrating respect, empathy, and a genuine willingness to assist. Unsafe behavior may result from inadequate training, unclear instructions, production pressures, equipment limitations, poor workplace conditions, or an incomplete understanding of the associated risks. By encouraging workers to explain the circumstances surrounding their actions, safety leaders are better able to identify the underlying causes and implement effective corrective measures. This approach promotes trust, encourages openness, mutual respect, and constructive dialogue during safety interventions. When workers feel that the purpose of the intervention is to understand the circumstances rather than to assign blame, they are generally more willing to explain what occurred, acknowledge their mistakes, and discuss the factors that contributed to the at-risk behavior. This openness enables safety leaders to identify underlying causes, address workplace deficiencies, and develop practical corrective measures. By encouraging workers to take ownership of their actions and actively participate in identifying solutions, a supportive approach promotes voluntary compliance, strengthens accountability, and fosters a positive and sustainable safety culture. 5.2.3 Rational and objective approach. A rational and objective approach relies on facts, evidence, and logical assessment rather than assumptions or emotional reactions. It is particularly appropriate during incident investigations, hazard assessments, and discussions relating to at-risk behavior. This approach requires the safety leader to consider what occurred, what conditions existed, what factors contributed to the behavior, what risks were created, and what improvements are required to prevent recurrence. By focusing on objective evidence, this approach supports fair, transparent, and consistent decision-making. 5.3 Recommended intervention sequence for managing at-risk behavior. When responding to at-risk behavior, safety leaders should apply the intervention approach that best suits the circumstances. In most situations, the following sequence is recommended. First preference, supportive and caring approach. The initial intervention should seek to understand the circumstances surrounding the behavior, engage respectfully with the worker, and identify the factors that contributed to the unsafe practice. Establishing trust at the outset encourages open discussion and increases the likelihood of identifying effective corrective actions. Second preference, rational and objective approach. Once the circumstances have been understood, discussions should focus on objective evidence, identified risks, and practical solutions. Decisions should be based on facts and observations rather than assumptions, emotions, or personal opinions. Final preference, controlling or corrective approach. A firm corrective intervention may be necessary where there is deliberate disregard for safety requirements, repeated unsafe behavior despite previous intervention, or an immediate risk of serious injury. Even in these circumstances, the intervention should remain fair, proportionate, professional, and focused on preventing recurrence rather than assigning blame. No single intervention approach is appropriate for every situation. Effective safety leadership requires the ability to assess the circumstances, understand the factors influencing behavior, and apply the intervention approach most likely to achieve a positive and lasting improvement in workplace safety. Thank you. Congratulations. You have successfully completed Psychological Methods of Managing At-Risk Behavior. Key takeaways. Understand the psychology behind at-risk behavior. Apply the appropriate intervention approach. Balance support with accountability. Foster a positive and sustainable safety culture. Thank you for your participation. Your commitment to safety makes a difference. By applying the knowledge gained throughout this course, you can help create a safer, healthier, and more resilient workplace for everyone. Thank you, and stay safe.